Welcome back. Welcome back into the Arc Media podcast, everyone. I am your host, Noah Dunlap, for those of you who don't know. Coming to you, second time we've done the YouTube video. Hopefully everything's working out there. We're still trying to get a few things fixed in terms of the YouTube side of things, but that's okay. We will get there pretty soon, so don't worry about that. As you can see today, we're rocking the Aladdin shirt. No doubt. If you don't like Aladdin, I don't know what to tell you. You just got to be better. That's really all there is to say about it. So coming to you, had a busy day already today. Woke up pretty early, watched Brazil, Croatia in the World Cup. Brazil choking away a lead, went to extra time. Neymar gets the goal, 15 minutes into extra time, just to watch Brazil give up the equalizer 10 minutes later. And then they end up in a situation where you lose in penalty kicks without Neymar even getting the chance to kick. Quite frankly, it's inexcusable. There is no other way around it. In terms of penalty kicks in soccer, I understand the goal is that you want your best player in the spot where if you have to have it, he's there and you can rely on him to hit that kick at the end. The issue is in a situation like today, and it's something that we see way too often in terms of soccer, which is that you try to save your best player until that very last spot, that fifth spot, and he never gets the chance to kick. And that's exactly what happened today. If I were a soccer coach, I think I'm putting my best player at 4. Because at 4, it's almost guaranteed that he's getting the chance to kick. And if you bet on yourself and you bet on everyone else in front of him, the key is that, hey, he still manages to kick. And there is a pretty decent likelihood that he may be in the situation to go ahead and end it right there. So I think at 4 is where I would always put my best player. I don't know what to tell you. Brazil decided to go a different way. Brazil decided to lean heavy on Neymar in the 5th spot, and he ended up not getting a chance to kick. There really is nothing else you can say about it. Apart from the U.S., I am a huge Brazilian soccer fan. I think the way they play, when you watch just the passing, you watch the graceful, artistic nature, if you want to go there, in terms of the way they play. It's fun to watch. And growing up, especially when I was like a really young kid, it was always Brazil, Brazil, Brazil. The issue is that at this point, is that really true? Because when you look at it now, Brazil has made, I believe it's the knockout stages, the knockout round of 14 straight World Cups, which is an absolutely insane number. There's no denying that. It's absolutely insane. But the other thing to point out is that they have now lost in the quarters of 4 of the last 5 World Cups. For a nation that prides itself so much on soccer, for a nation that so heavily leans towards being a football nation, if you want to go there, that's inexcusable. You simply have to be better. And the fact that they had the lead today late and you needed to hang on for 15 minutes and they couldn't get the job done, I really don't know what to tell you about that. Props to Neymar. He's as advertised. There's no denying that. There's no question about that. But at some point, you got to have somebody else step up. And today, they didn't have it. Now, props to the Croatian goalkeeper. Phenomenal match. Just time and time again, you see him saving the day. The number of saves that he made today, the quality of the saves that he made today, just phenomenal match all the way around. So you have to, just tip your cap to him and say, fantastic job. But when you look at it, if you're a Brazilian fan with the match today, you feel like you let one get away. And to be totally honest, they absolutely did. So that's what I spent this morning doing. Watched that match, went ahead, got a lift in. Y'all know we're lifting 5-6 days a week at least. Stay big, get those gains, boys and girls. no question. But now, hey, we're right back in. We're about to do a little episode here. We got a lot to get to. We're talking sports today, so that is solely what we're focused on today. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. So I want to start off talking, as we oftentimes do, about college football. There's a lot to get to in terms of college football, so that's where we're going to start off. And what I want to start with is I want to talk about the Heisman Trophy, as the Heisman ceremony is coming up tomorrow night. Well, we all kind of think we know who's going to win, and I think he is going to win. But they did announce the Heisman finalists earlier this week. So I want to break this down, give a few numbers surrounding the Heisman finalists, and potentially, I guess, who I would say is arguably the most deserving player in terms of this award. So with that being said, the Heisman finalists, we have C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. You have Caleb Williams from USC. You have Max Duggan, TCU, and you have Stetson Bennett from the University of Georgia. The one notable name that got left off the finalist list, as multiple people have pointed out, is Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. Now, as we know, Hendon Hooker tore his ACL with, a game and a half left, give or take, in the season. I think that ended up hurting his chances greatly. Whether it should have or not, you can make that argument going either way. But the fact is that you do have a lot of ground to make up when you end up missing a game and a half, especially at the end of the year. If this had happened at the beginning of the year in terms of the non-conference slate, I think he would have been able to make up that ground. But with it coming at the end of the year, especially with one of the games being a loss that he missed a quarter and a half, give or take, of the South Carolina game, it's just hard all the way around to make up that ground. So those are the finalists. Now, the question is, who is going to end up winning the Heisman Trophy? It certainly looks like it's going to be Caleb Williams. And I think it's probably going to be Caleb Williams. Should it be? There's an argument to be made elsewhere. In terms of numbers, Caleb Williams has the best numbers of the finalists. Now, I've been heavy pushing Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. all year, especially late in the year. As when you look at the numbers, Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr., he has roughly 400 more total yards than Caleb Williams does. At least he did, I guess, maybe before the Pac-12 title game. And the other thing to keep in mind is his team is 10-2. Caleb Williams' team, 11-2. That extra game ended up being the difference between them having the same record. And yes, Caleb Williams does have more touchdowns, has a slightly better touchdown to interception ratio. And I think that's a huge part of why Caleb Williams is the guy right now instead of Michael Penix Jr. coming out of the Pac-12. But one other thing to keep in mind surrounding that argument is the talent that Michael Penix Jr. is playing with at Washington doesn't come anywhere close to matching up with what Caleb Williams is dealing with at USC. And the reason I say that is there are a lot of people out here who want to act like this USC transformation from last year to this year just came out of the blue. It didn't. It didn't at all. And how do we know that? We know that because Lincoln Riley, who was at Oklahoma, who decided to bail out of Oklahoma and go to USC, when he made that move, he brought a ton of guys from Norman, Oklahoma with him to LA. Oklahoma was pretty good last year. We know that. When you add the really good players from that Oklahoma team You let them transfer and play immediately this year at USC to go along with the talent that USC already had on their roster. This transformation is not surprising. It's basically Oklahoma West. That's what Lincoln Riley turned it into. So it's not like Caleb Williams is playing with a bunch of scrubs over in LA right now. Caleb Williams was playing with some really good football players. Certainly much better than what Michael Penix is playing with. So I think that's one reason I would make the Michael Penix argument. Then the other thing to keep in mind, and we talk about the Heisman Trophy all the time. The Heisman Trophy is supposed to be the best player in college football. Some people want to go with the most valuable player in college football. Either way, when we talk about being the best, the most valuable, one thing that we focus on, one thing that is most important is how you play against really good competition. So let's look at some numbers. I'm going to give you guys some numbers surrounding these quarterbacks' numbers against top 25 competition. So let's look at this real quick in terms of the Heisman finalists. Max Duggan, 2-1 against top 25. Not bad. I mean, he's playing at TCU. Your loss came this weekend, actually, against a really good K-State team. It came off of a matter of inches, legitimately a matter of inches, that the ball almost crossed the goal line. 59.3 completion percentage. That number is extremely low. I think that's going to end up doing Max Duggan in the long term. 655 yards passing. That's not good enough. You look at it, 5-1 touchdown to interceptions. Not bad. Not bad numbers. Not great numbers. And then a rushing touchdown to go along with it. Against top 25 competition, those numbers simply are not good enough to win the Heisman Trophy. I think Max Duggan is possibly going to end up finishing as the runner-up because of what he's done the rest of the year. But against top 25 competition, those numbers aren't good enough. There is no denying that. There's no way to sugarcoat that at all. Those numbers simply are not good enough. You look at it, C.J. Stroud over at Ohio State. 2-1 record, much like Max Duggan. The difference, a 70.4 completion percentage. That number, great number in terms of top 25 competition that you play against. 926 yards, pretty good. 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 148 quarterback rating. Those numbers, you can't complain about, especially against solid competition. I believe both of the interceptions may have actually come against Michigan in the game 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. So C.J. Stroud, I think his numbers against ranked competition are good, but the issue is that against unranked competition, C.J. Stroud struggled just a little bit. It was more backwards than it should have been. We look at a guy like Caleb Williams, 3-2 against top 25 competition. That number bothers me just a little bit. And the reason I say that number bothers me is, yes, you played a lot of ranked teams. 5 ranked teams, it's a pretty good schedule. I think we all agree. But when your team only goes 3-2, I think you need to do a little better in terms of that. A 64.7 completion percentage, certainly not bad. The one number here that sticks out, Caleb Williams threw for over 1,600 yards against ranked competition. That is a big number. That is a big number, and I think that could end up being the difference between a Max Duggan winning this award and Caleb Williams likely winning this award. To go along with that, Caleb Williams had 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions against these ranked teams, a 158 QBR, and he had 4 rushing touchdowns. Those numbers, loud. Absolutely loud against really good ranked competition. Okay, at least decent ranked competition. We are talking about the Pac-12 here. The other finalist, and I know there were a lot of people who lost their mind when Stetson Bennett was named a Heisman finalist. And you can make the argument that Stetson Bennett shouldn't be there. And I think that's a decent argument to make when you look at his numbers all the way around. His numbers all the way around certainly do not match up at all, in terms of the entire year. What his numbers do in terms of rank competition, they are the best in the country. Hear me out on these numbers. 5-0 against top 25 competition. 73% completion percentage. Great number. 1,472 yards passing. Solid number. Caleb Williams has 150 more yards, give or take, passing. But you can't hate on the 1,472 that Stetson has in terms of playing against ranked competition. 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 185 QBR, and then 4 rushing touchdowns to go along with it. Those numbers right there, that's why Stetson Bennett is a Heisman finalist. There are a lot of people who are going to complain and argue that he shouldn't be a finalist, but the answer is, against the best competition, Stetson Bennett showed up when it mattered most. And those numbers show that. Those numbers bear that out, and that's why Stetson is a Heisman finalist. Is he going to win? No, he's not going to win. But when you play that well against the best competition in the country, you are going to get noticed, and you are going to get at least a bit and a share of your recognition. And I think that's what we're getting with Stetson Bennett right there. So when you look at it, Stetson has the best numbers against ranked competition, but against everyone else, he doesn't really have those numbers. Part of that is due to the fact that Georgia was demolishing people in a ton of games. Stetson didn't play all that much. That's fair, but that does hurt your Heisman chances. Max Duggan, like I said, against top 25 competition, he just didn't play well enough in my eyes. I think he shied away just a little bit. I think that's going to hurt him. CJ Stroud, the numbers just aren't quite there against the unranked competition. His numbers against ranked competition, pretty good, but against unranked competition, I think whether you want to say he took his foot off the gas just a little bit, it may also be a touch of that Stetson Bennett syndrome of when Ohio State was destroying people, CJ Stroud just didn't play enough. That's certainly an argument to be made too. I think there's some truth to that. So I don't know that CJ Stroud is there. The answer is going to be Caleb Williams. Do I think Caleb Williams is the best player in the country? No, I do not. I've long since said that Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama, is the best player in the country. Is Bryce Young the most valuable player in the country this year? Probably so. He was playing against he was playing with an Alabama roster that just didn't play very well, to be totally honest, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I've never wavered from the notion that I think Bryce Young is the best player in the country. Clearly, he's not winning the Heisman Trophy, and quite frankly, he doesn't deserve to. Alabama didn't play well enough, and at times, he himself didn't play well enough. But that's the weird thing about the Heisman Trophy is it's not necessarily solely about who the best player is. It's about the most deserving. It's about the most valuable. And this year, Bryce Young didn't meet those criteria, if you will. The other name, like I mentioned earlier, Hendon Hooker. Let's give a few numbers for Hendon Hooker surrounding top 25 play. 2-2 against ranked competition. That number's got to be better. That's number one. 65.2 completion percentage. Not bad, but not great. Doesn't match up with Stetson Bennett. Doesn't match up with CJ Stroud. 1,066 passing yards. Not a bad number. Not a great number. It's basically 260 a game in terms of against ranked competition, which you can't complain about, but it's not great. 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It's a pretty good ratio. Not bad against these top 25 teams. And then a QBR of 154. That's the reason Hendon Hooker isn't a Heisman finalist. The fact is that he missed a game and a half, and against ranked competition, his team went 10-2, or not 10-2. His team went 2-2, and his numbers against that ranked competition, they don't match up with the Caleb Williams. They don't necessarily match up with the CJ Stroud, and they don't match up with Stetson Bennett. So the answer with the Heisman Trophy is going to end up being Caleb Williams. And based on the finalists, I think that's valid. When you look at balancing everything out, ranked competition, unranked competition, numbers throughout the whole year, the Caleb Williams argument is fine. I think in terms of the finalists that we have, he is the most deserving. So come tomorrow night at roughly 9-ish Eastern time, I guess it is, I would expect Caleb Williams to be the newest Heisman Trophy winner. Sticking with college football now, let's talk about the transfer portal. This is something that has been a huge topic and a huge focus in terms of college football, but not even necessarily just college football, more college athletics as a whole in terms of being the transfer portal. As we know, a few years back, the NCAA changed their rule. You now get one free transfer where you don't have to sit out if you want it. Okay, that's fine, and I think that's pretty important. I think that's certainly a good thing to have as far as it goes. The issue is with the newest craze in college football and college athletics is the NIL stuff. It's name, image, likeness. It's the fact that these guys can now get paid. That mixed with the transfer portal has completely shifted college athletics as a whole. It's completely shifted college athletics as we know it. Here's a few numbers. This was as of, I believe it was Wednesday evening that we have these numbers. In terms of the transfer portal, there were 1,100 players to announce that they were entering the portal in the last 24 hours as of, like I said, I believe it was Wednesday evening. That's an insane number, especially when you consider the fact that in terms of college football alone, there are roughly 11,000 scholarships available. That means 10% of all of the available scholarships had entered the transfer portal looking for a new home. Early signing period starts in 2 weeks. When you look at all of that, when you add in the fact that early signing period is coming up in 2 weeks, and you break down the high school recruiting that's going on already, you break down the needs of different programs, you break down the NIL stuff, you break it all down, the fact is that of these 1,100 people who just entered the portal, normally roughly a fourth end up changing programs. 25 to 30% at most are probably going to find new homes. Sure, I think the transfer portal is a good thing, just like I think the NIL stuff is absolutely a good thing as well, but it is important to mention, and it is important to point out that is the portal being used the way I think it was intended to? No, I don't. I don't know that the NCAA really thought all of this through when they decided to make the one free transfer out there a thing. I don't think they necessarily realized where this was going to go. It's become much more than I think a lot of people wanted it to. And the reason I say that is think about college basketball. College basketball with the one and done rule, the rule that basically said you had to go to college for 1 year out of high school before you declare for the NBA draft. What that did is it destroyed the sport of college basketball to a large degree. And the reason is that you had people in these programs for 1 year and then they dip, and you never get continuity with these programs. That basically, if you're a fan of a team, as you all know, I'm an Ole Miss guy. I graduated from Ole Miss, huge Ole Miss fan. Ole Miss has never been a good basketball team. But if Ole Miss were one of the Blue Bloods, if Ole Miss were a Kentucky, if they were a Duke, if you are a North Carolina and one of these teams, the fact is that you lose a little bit of that interest when every single year you get turnover on your roster. And we can argue and say, yeah, it's a good thing and that's fine. Maybe it is. But the fact is that one thing about college sports that has always been there is it's like, hey, you're in college for 3 or 4 years. We expect to hear your name surrounding that program for 3 or 4 years. With the one and done rule in basketball, and now with the transfer portal in all sports, what we're seeing is I think we're seeing too much and too often a situation where you have a guy commit to a program, he's there for 1 year, and then because of the portal, because of NIL stuff, he dips and goes somewhere else. Maybe it's best for him, but it's certainly not best for the sport. So it's a shaky ground, and I think it's one where the NCAA is trying to find that middle ground of how to fix this in terms of doing what's right for the athletes and doing what's right for the sport all the way around. And right now, the way the transfer portal is set up, you're not doing yourself any good in terms of your sport. Right now, you legitimately basically have free agency in college athletics, and that's great for the athletes, but for the sport, it's certainly not, because you don't get the continuity. And when you look up and you're a fan of one of these programs, and it's like, okay, you have a freshman on campus playing this year, it's like, hey, I've got another year or two with him on campus. I'm going to know his name. I'm going to hear about him all the time. And then the next year comes around and you're like, wait, where did he go? Oh, well, he left. And then you lose that continuity that has always made college sports so great. So the transfer portal, for all the good it's done, and it certainly has done a ton of good, it has also potentially killed college athletics to a degree, at least in terms of as we know it. We don't know. Like I said, right now there's well over 1,100 players in the transfer portal in college football alone. Out of that 1,100, I would say 350 at max end up changing programs. The rest are going to end up right back at the program they were. They're going to take their name out of the portal. But guess what? You know what they're going to do next year? They're going to enter the portal again, and we're just going to continue to do this same cycle that we always end up with. So the transfer portal, it's good, it's bad, it's a mixture of both, depending on who you talk to and depending on your view of college athletics as a whole. Moving on past that, a few other things I want to talk about before we wrap up today. Aaron Judge, Yankee slugger and outfielder Aaron Judge, arguably the best player in baseball. Shohei Ohtani would like a word, but other than that, at this point in time, I don't think there's any question that Aaron Judge is probably the best. He's certainly the best hitter in baseball. Is he the best overall player? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, his defense doesn't slack either. There's no doubt about that. We certainly aren't saying that. He became a free agent, and you've seen negotiations go on all throughout the offseason trying to figure out where Aaron Judge was headed. The Yankees made an offer early on that simply got shot down, as it should have, because it wasn't good enough. It was nowhere close to good enough. And when the Yankees made that offer and got shot down, what you ended up with is you ended up in a situation where a few other franchises got involved. And among those franchises that got involved, the one that I thought had a really good shot was the San Francisco Giants. For those of you who don't know, Aaron Judge played baseball and football at Fresno State up in Northern California. San Francisco, you got the Bay Area, you got that. You've got a team who hasn't been necessarily bad. They were really good, not this past year, but the year before. And then this year they took a step back, and you looked at it and you said, hey, maybe they can get back on track. Well, They had a chance at Aaron Judge, and they couldn't get the job done. And if you're a Giants fan, which I have been for a long time, I've been a Giants fan since growing up when I was basically in middle school. You had the Tim Lincecum, the Will Cain years, the even year Giants, who it seemed like every time there was an even year, they would win the World Series. I've been a Giants fan since back in 2008, 2009, back in that range. So the chance that they had at getting Aaron Judge, it was huge. I was excited. It seemed like a natural fit, and they couldn't close the deal because instead, Aaron Judge has indeed re signed with the New York Yankees. The contract, as is reported, is 9 years and $360 million. Sorry, I had to get some water there. 9 years, $360 million. By my math, which isn't always great, that's $40 million a year. That's a good number. Personally, I think that number could have been higher. Because when you look at what Aaron Judge is worth, it's certainly more than 40. When you look at, I think the fun thing surrounding baseball contracts is going to be Shohei Ohtani. When you look at his deal that he's going to sign, if Shohei Ohtani has another really good year on both sides of the diamond, both as a pitcher and as a hitter, what do you put his market value at? A guy who is one of the best pitchers already in baseball, that in and of itself is good enough to get you $30 to $35 million a year. Then you add on the fact that he may also be one of the best hitters in baseball. That, as we've now seen from Aaron Judge, is good enough to give you 40. So when you even that out, I think there's a good chance that Shohei Ohtani, his market value is probably north of $60 million. Now, obviously, there's no chance he's actually going to get $60 million. But I think that's where you could actually reasonably place his market value. I think when it comes down to it in the end, we're looking more at a situation where Ohtani's probably going to get 44, 45, somewhere in that range over the course of 10 years or more. He's still a young guy. He is arguably the face of Major League Baseball moving forward for the next decade or so. So when Ohtani's time comes, I think it maybe after this upcoming year is when Ohtani's contract should potentially come up. I may be wrong about that, but I think I'm correct. I think we could legitimately be looking at a 10-year, $450 million, a 10-year, $500 million deal for Shohei Ohtani. It's going to be insane. It's going to be wild. But then again, he absolutely deserves it. But no, Aaron Judge re-signs with the Yankees, 9 and 360, 40 a year. Probably could have been more, but clearly I think what we got from this deal with Aaron Judge and the negotiations as a whole and the way they played out is, regardless of anything else, Aaron Judge did want to be a New York Yankee. He wanted to get paid as well, but he wanted to be a New York Yankee, and it wasn't solely about money. It was about taking the best deal for him and trying to stay in New York. And hey, if he wants to stay in New York, you can't fault him there. He took the deal, $40 million, $40 million a year. I'm not turning that down. I don't know who would. So props to Aaron Judge. It's well-deserved. He will be back in New York and the Bronx for the foreseeable future, at least. Moving on away from that now, let's talk NFL. We have two stories to get to in terms of the NFL before we wrap up the show. The Dallas Cowboys. We've all seen the storylines. We've all seen the headlines, the rumors. Dallas looking at Odell Beckham Jr. Dallas certainly looks like a Super Bowl contender this year. The defense is ferocious. That defense is, man, they get after it. As I've mentioned before, Micah Parsons is arguably the best defensive football player I've ever seen in my life. He is unguardable on a pass rush. He is too strong. He is too fast. Just the shiftiness that he can actually use with the speed and the strength at the line of scrimmage coming out of the linebacker spot. It's something that you don't see very often. And the other key is with that speed, he can also drop back in coverage too. The guy is a monster. He is an animal, and it is fun to watch. Me, not a Dallas Cowboy fan, as anyone who knows me well knows, but Micah Parsons, my God, he is a football player. Well, with that, and with the fact that Odell Beckham Jr. is a free agent and is coming off of his torn ACL in the Super Bowl last year, we're in a situation where Odell Beckham has been talking to a few teams trying to find a new team, and no one really knows exactly what's going through Odell Beckham's head. He was with the Rams. There was some talk that he was interested in rejoining the New York Giants, which I think that could be a fun fit with Daniel Jones, my boy Danny Dimes back, just slinging bombs to Odell Beckham. It could be fun. Is it going to happen? I'm not holding my breath. I don't think it's going to happen. I do, in the end, think Odell Beckham is going to be a Dallas Cowboy. He's shown interest. Dallas has clearly shown interest. But a report did come out earlier this week that says the Dallas Cowboys are a little shaky and a little hesitant on his ACL recovery progress. That has to be a concern. Because when we're talking about Odell Beckham Jr., you're talking about a guy who has already had some injury issues before this torn ACL, and now you're saying, hey, he's coming back from ACL surgery he tore in the Super Bowl. You don't want to sign him if you don't know what you're getting. And it's one where the talent is undeniable if he's healthy. If he's not healthy, then he doesn't do you any good. Now, the key is I think Dallas is good enough that at this point in time, with where they are, with how weak the rest of the NFC is, the NFC East is phenomenal. Every team in that division may end up making the playoffs, and that's not a joke. But when you look at it, with the rest of the NFC being weak, the Dallas Cowboys are going to make the playoffs. With the fact that they are already going to make the playoffs, I think the key with Dallas right now is you can make the argument that the regular season simply doesn't matter. With where they are, if you know that you were in the postseason already, and at this point in time, there is a 90+% chance that Dallas is going to make the playoffs. Do you try to sign Odell Beckham and get that done and say, hey, we've still got 4 or 5 weeks before the postseason starts for you to get healthy, for you to continue to progress from that ACL surgery, and then we see what happens in the postseason. We could potentially bring you in. I think it would be an intriguing move. Is that where they go with it? It might be. I think Odell Beckham would be perfectly fine with that. I think that's absolutely what Odell Beckham wants. The notion of being able to be signed, be a Dallas Cowboy, and not have to return until the postseason this year, that's what Odell Beckham would want. It's certainly what I would want. So I think Odell is going to end up being a Dallas Cowboy. It's simply a matter of when as opposed to if. Like I said, there are a few other teams who have been trying to get involved, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see Odell joining the New York Giants again. The Raiders, I believe, I may have seen is another team that he talked to. I can't see Odell joining the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are good enough. I don't think they're a legitimate contender to make it worthwhile for Odell Beckham to head out west and go join Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the answer is Dallas. Like I said, it's simply a matter of when, less so than if at this point. Last story I want to get to. The Tennessee Titans. For anyone curious, my NFL team, the Tennessee Titans. I also like the Miami Dolphins. Those are the two teams that I focus most on in terms of the NFL. The Tennessee Titans have fired their GM. They did it earlier this week. John Robinson let go in terms of the GM role in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans. And it came as a shock. It came as a bombshell. It surprised a ton of people. And I think rightfully so. The reason I say that is John Robinson has been the GM with the Tennessee Titans since 2016. His Titan teams in that span have never had back-to-back losing seasons. They won the division title last year. If I'm not mistaken, they won the division title the year before as well. And currently this year, despite struggling just a little bit, they are still nearly 3 games ahead of the second place team in the AFC South because the AFC South is absolutely terrible. The Houston Texans, trash. The Jacksonville Jaguars, trash. The Indianapolis Colts, they're 4-7-1, I believe it is. And with Jeff Saturday as the interim guy, you don't know how that's going to end up going down the line. So it's almost guaranteed that the Tennessee Titans are going to win the division yet again. So why'd you fire your GM? Plenty of reasons. Number one, the obvious one is A.J. Brown this past week. A.J. Brown, former Tennessee Titan, former Ole Miss wide receiver, hotty toddy boys and girls, absolutely torched the Titans secondary this past week. I think it was 135 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns maybe. Just had a field day on this Titan defense. And this is an A.J. Brown guy that the Titans ended up letting walk away this offseason. A draft day trade that currently hasn't worked out at all. So I think that's one to look at and say, hey, that's the obvious first reason that John Robinson got fired, is not figuring out a way to keep A.J. Brown in Nashville. A few other stats surrounding John Robinson's time as the Titans GM. You look at it. Like I said, he's been the GM since 2016. In that time period, as of currently today, Friday, December 8th, I think it is, 2022, only 2 of John Robinson's 8 first-round picks since he became the GM of the Tennessee Titans are still on the roster. One of them, Jeffrey Simmons. The other, Treylon Burks. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Treylon Burks is the guy who ended up being drafted with the picks that they got for the A.J. Brown deal. The hope was that Burks was going to end up being basically a younger version of A.J. Brown, a less expensive version of A.J. Brown. Right now, that hasn't worked out. Part of it's injuries, part of it's the offense itself just looks a little sluggish, and you don't have that same feeling as you've had in years past. So that deal hasn't worked. The other thing to point out with John Robinson as the GM of the Tennessee Titans is you look at the number of trades that he's made or the number of potentially free agent signings with a few of them that haven't worked out. The list, it goes on, but let's name off a few. Julio Jones, didn't work out. He's already gone. Vic Beasley, didn't work out. He's already gone. Jadeveon Clowney, there was hope there, didn't work out. He's already gone. John Robinson did his best, and I don't blame the guy at all. I think a lot of those deals are similar deals to things that I would have made. If I were the GM of the Tennessee Titans, there were a few situations there when you looked at Julio Jones, there was hope that it could work out. You got him reasonably cheap, a guy who is on the backside of his career, but he can still make an impact. And he just didn't. It didn't work out. You look at Jadeveon Clowney, a guy who has struggled just a little bit in his time in the league, and the hope was we get him for reasonably cheap, and you see what happens with it, and guess what? It was a complete travesty with Jadeveon Clowney as a Tennessee Titan. So when you look at a few of the trades that he's made, when you look at a few of the free agent signings that he's made that have gone bad, and then you add on the A.J. Brown catastrophe that was an absolute embarrassment. As a Titan fan, the A.J. Brown thing was infuriating because everyone watching A.J. Brown knew he was one of the best receivers in the NFL. And he was what was keeping Ryan Tannehill afloat in this offense. When you traded A.J. Brown, immediately you looked at it and you said, hey, this offense, it's now Derrick Henry, and that's basically it. And that's been the issue all year long. Right now, it's been Derrick Henry, and that's it. When Derrick Henry plays well, the Titans play well. When he doesn't, the Titans really don't play well. It's that simple. There's a reason Mike Vrabel, the Titans head coach, got upset on draft night when the trade was announced. Mike Vrabel's not stupid. Mike Vrabel knew what was going on. He saw it. He saw the writing on the wall. He was like, dude, our offense is going to struggle this year. And that's exactly what's happened. So we can look at it and you can say this, you can say that, you can say anything else. But the fact is that anyone with a brain saw the struggles coming this year, and like it or not, and you can appreciate what he did as the Titans GM in the past. You can appreciate that the team has, consistently now won the division a couple years. But when you look at the roster makeup, when you look at down the line, does this look like a team who is going to contend for Super Bowls? Does this look like a team who is set up to be a real playoff contender? The answer is no. The answer is no. And when you're a general manager, when you're a GM, that is your biggest goal. That is your biggest focus. And right now, anyone who follows the Tennessee Titans, anyone with a functioning brain who knows football, looks at it and says, hey, this team isn't good enough. And that falls on John Robinson's shoulders, and that ended up being the reason he was let go. It sucks, but the sports industry is tough, and you simply have to be great each and every year. And over time, it looks like things with the Tennessee Titans have just consistently taken a downward trajectory, which is why John Robinson was let go. That is going to do it for the show today. I love you guys. This, as you know, the ARC Media Podcast. My name, Noah Dunlap. I am the host. Be sure to share this show, friends, family, anyone else. I don't care whether you love it. I don't care whether you hate it. Share it with them. They may love it. They may hate it. Y'all know I'm going to be here regardless. So do that for me. Share it with friends, family. Tell them to check us out here at the Art Media Podcast. Be sure to leave ratings, reviews on any platform that you are watching this, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple Podcast, whether it's now on YouTube. Give us go subscribe to the show. Leave a rating, leave a review. That's how we're growing. That's how we're getting better each and every day with what we are doing here at the Art Media Podcast with the content that we continue to push out each and every day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate the support. I love each and every one of you. I will be back on Monday. We're breaking down whatever happens throughout the weekend in terms of sports. It's a weekend in terms of December. We have NFL going on. We've got the Heisman ceremony coming up tomorrow night. We might talk about that on Monday. We really don't know, but one thing that we do know is something's going to happen this weekend that will give us something to talk about on Monday. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend. As always, y'all stay safe out there. I hope to see you guys on Monday. Be sure to check in then. I love you guys. The sport means the absolute world to me. I cannot express that enough. It is because of you that I'm able to do this each and every day. I'm able to talk about sports. I'm able to talk about anything that I want to. That support means the absolute world to me. I love each and every one of you so much. Keep tuning in. Keep listening. Keep loving what we're doing. I love you guys. I will see y'all on Monday. And as I said, in the meantime, y'all be safe out there. Love you guys.